A single drop of water was all it took to end her career, and even now that truth felt almost impossible, absurd in its simplicity. Elena Sanchez, a waitress drowning in $100,000 of student debt, had accidentally spilled one drop on the table of billionaire Julian Thorne, and she watched in horror as her manager, Mark Peterson, grovelled as though a flood had washed through the room instead of a single bead of water. But as she leaned forward to clean the table, her hands steady out of long practice even while her pulse thundered, Thorne bent toward his associate and began speaking in rapid, harsh Arabic. He insulted her, called her an empty-headed child, mocked her with the casual cruelty of a man who believed himself untouchable. Clear's throat, he assumed the help was invisible. He assumed she was ignorant. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that Elena's $100,000 in debt came from a master's degree in Arabic linguistics. She stood up, looked him dead in the eye, and the words that came out of her mouth next didn't just stop his heart. They changed her entire world. But before that moment, before the reckoning, there had been the chime of the service light on the kitchen computer, a sharp, relentless sound that had become the soundtrack to Elena Sanchez's waking nightmare. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the Meridian, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't even have a sign, was buzzing with the low hum of wealth and expectation. The air smelled of seared scallops and old money. Elena, 26, balanced 3 plates on her left arm, the ceramic pressing hard against a bruise she'd gotten last night, each plate costing more than her first car. By any academic measure, she was a genius. She held a master's degree in modern linguistics and Middle Eastern studies from a prestigious university. She could argue geopolitical theory in 3 languages and translate 13th-century poetry from 2 more. She was also 3 or 150 detillatate deigned. That crushing weight was why she was here at the Meridian in downtown Chicago, wearing a starched black apron and smiling politely at people who viewed her as furniture. Sanja's table for needs their check. Table 7 is asking for you and the Thorne party is here. Do not mess this up. The voice belonged to Mark Peterson, the restaurant's general manager, a man who lived in a state of perpetually clenched terror. He managed by fear, worshipping the wealthy clients and terrorizing the staff who served them. The Thorne party, Elena asked, her blood running a little cold. Julian Thorne, as in Thorne Global, as in the man who could buy this entire city block before his appetizer gets cold. He's in the private dining room, and he's particular. Peterson straightened his already perfect tie, his eyes darting nervously toward the private room's closed door. Everything is yes, Mr. Thorne. Right away, Mr. Thorne. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't exist. Got it, Mr. Peterson, Elena replied, her voice a flat, professional monotone. Don't look him in the eye, Peterson added, as a final useless instruction before bustling away. Elena took a deep breath, smoothing her apron. Clear's throat, her friend and fellow waitress, Sarah Jensen, slid up beside her at the service bar, grabbing a tray of drinks. You got Thorne. Good luck, Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. Last time he was here, he had his server fired because his steak was too loud when he cut it. I'm not kidding. Clear's throat, Peterson canned him on the spot. Too loud, Elena muttered under her breath. What does that even mean? It means he's an entitled monster, Sarah said, hoisting her tray. Just be a ghost, Elena, be a ghost and get through it. Elena nodded, but a familiar bitter heat rose in her chest. She had spent 5 years of her life becoming an expert. Her dissertation on the evolution of Gulf dialects had been called groundbreaking by her professors, and now her primary professional goal was to become a ghost for a man who believed a steak could be too loud. She grabbed a heavy silver pitcher of ice water, the condensation cold and slick against her fingers, and pushed open the heavy oak door to the private dining room. Inside, the room was quiet, insulated from the hum of the restaurant. 2 men sat at a table covered in documents. One was older, with a kind, tired face, Mr. Cole, Thorne's coup. The other, facing the door, was Julian Thorne. He wasn't what she expected. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with sharp, severe features and eyes so dark and intense they seemed to absorb the light in the room. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit like armor, and he radiated an aura of such profound impatience that Elena felt it like a physical force pressing against her ribs. Water, sir? She asked quietly. Thorne didn't even look up. He waved a dismissive hand. Deep in conversation with Cole, Elena moved with practiced, silent grace, approaching Mr. Cole first and filling his glass before stepping toward Julian Thorne. She held the heavy pitcher carefully, tilting it slowly as the water streamed into the crystal glass. And then it happened. A piece of ice clinging stubbornly to the inside of the pitcher broke free and fell into the glass with a tiny clink. The smallest, most insignificant splash escaped the rim. It wasn't a spill. It was a micro-droplet. A single, tiny drop of water landed on the dark wood of the table, inches from a stack of financial reports. Elena froze. Julian Thorne stopped talking. The silence was absolute, thick and suffocating. He slowly, deliberately turned his head. His dark eyes did not look at her. They fixed on the single drop of water. He stared at it for 1 second, 2, then he lifted his gaze to her, and what she saw there was not anger but something colder, far more devastating, dismissive contempt. "Mr. Peterson," he boomed, his voice slicing through the heavy door, and Elena felt her stomach turn to ice. She hadn't even spilled it on him, not really. It was a single drop on the table, nothing more, barely enough to glisten against the polished surface. And yet the door flew open as if a catastrophe had struck, and Peterson scurried in, his face pale with panic. "Mr. Thorne, is everything all right?" he blurted, breathless. "My apologies, this server," Thorne said, his voice dripping with disdain as he gestured to Elena, "is incompetent. I'm in the middle of a $1 billion negotiation and I have to be interrupted by this." "Sir, I am so sorry," Elena began, her clear throat voice shaking slightly. "It was just one quiet—" Peterson hissed at her, his eyes wide with fear, and pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his breast pocket, personally dabbing at the single, offending drop of water as if it were toxic waste. "I apologize, Mr. Thorne, profusely. It will not happen again. I will remove her from your service immediately." Thorne leaned back in his chair, his eyes still locked on Elena, and he looked at her, really looked at her, with her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and her face pale with humiliation. Then he turned to Mr. Cole. The billionaire let out a short, huffing laugh of disbelief, and then he began to speak in a language he was certain no one in this room but his associate would understand. He spoke in rapid, fluent, Gulf-style Arabic. "This is what's wrong with this country," he said, his voice laced with venom. "They let children do a professional's job. This place is a joke. Look at her. Clears throat, greater than she's probably as empty-headed as she is clumsy. She can't even pour water. I'd be surprised if she can even read." He smirked at Mr. Cole, expecting a commiserating laugh. But Cole, to his credit, just looked uncomfortable. Thorne glanced back at Elena, who was standing frozen, her hands at her side, and added one final dismissive insult in Arabic. "Just get her out of my sight." Peterson, hearing the foreign language, just smiled nervously, assuming it was part of their business. "Right away, sir. Sanchez, you're done here. Go to my office now." He turned to leave, expecting obedience. But Elena didn't move. Something inside Elena Sanchez snapped. It wasn't just the insult. It was the years of frustration. It was the crushing debt. It was the bitter irony of being called empty-headed in the very language she had dedicated her life to mastering. She had spent sleepless nights in a library, writing a 200-page thesis on the precise dialect he was now using to mock her. Peterson had his back to her, expecting her to follow. Mr. Cole was looking down at his papers, embarrassed. Julian Thorne was already turning back to his documents, having dismissed her from his reality. Elena took one clear throat, steadying breath. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She did not speak to Peterson. She spoke directly to Julian Thorne. She said in perfect, unaccented, academic-grade Arabic, "Sir, your assumption is incorrect." The entire room stopped. Peterson froze, his hand on the doorknob. Mr. Cole's head snapped up, his jaw slacked. Julian Thorne's hand, which was reaching for his pen, stopped dead. He didn't turn around. He just froze, his entire body rigid. Elena continued, her voice not loud, but carrying the precise cutting authority of a professor addressing a disruptive student. "I am not empty-headed," she continued in flawless Arabic, "and I can in fact read. I can read the financial reports on your table. I can read the poetry of Al-Mutanabi, and I can most certainly read your character, which you've just laid bare for everyone to see." Julian Thorne turned his head slowly, as if in a dream, his face utterly drained of color. The arrogance, the impatience, the sheer power, it all evaporated, replaced by a look of profound, unadulterated shock. He stared at her as if she had just grown a second head. Peterson, hearing this stream of what was to him gibberish, spun around. "Sanchez, what in God's name do you think you're doing? I told you to get out." Elena ignored him. Clear's throat, greater than she held Julian Thorne's gaze. "Furthermore," she said, switching to the same Gulf dialect he had used, her accent flawless, "my competence is not defined by a single drop of water, just as a man's character should not be defined by the money in his bank. But you, sir, are making that a very difficult argument to support." Mr. Cole let out a small, strangled cough. Julian Thorne simply stared. He was speechless. This waitress, this nothing, had not only understood his private insult, but she had replied, she had corrected him. She clears throat had lectured him, and she had done it in a dialect that his own multi-million-dollar tutors struggled to perfect. What is going on? Peterson shrieked, his face turning a blotchy red. Are you threatening this customer, Sanchez? Elena finally broke her gaze from Thorne and looked at her manager, switching back to English, her voice calm and clear. Mr. Peterson, this gentleman insulted me. He called me an empty-headed child, and said I was clumsy and couldn't read. He did so in Arabic, assuming I was too stupid to understand him. Peterson looked frantically between Elena and Thorne. Mr. Thorne, I'm sure she's mistaken. She's hysterical. She is not mistaken. The voice was Julian Thorne's. It was quiet, strained. He was still pale. He looked at Elena, and for the first time, he wasn't clear throat looking at her. He was seeing her. The disbelieving shock on his face was slowly being replaced by something else. Something colder, a dawning, terrifying calculation. She understood every word, Thorne said in English, his voice flat. Peterson's entire world seemed to crumble in that instant, and he looked at Elena with a new, horrified expression. You speak that? I have a master's degree in it, Elena said simply. You're fired. Peterson finally sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at the door. You are fired. How dare you? Insubordination, eavesdropping. Get out. Get out of this restaurant. Clear out your locker. Elena looked at Peterson, then she looked at Thorne. Thorne was just watching her, his expression now completely unreadable. He didn't defend her. He didn't stop the manager. He just watched. A bitter laugh almost escaped Elena's lips, of course. What did she expect? That he would suddenly defend her? He was a billionaire, and she was the help who had embarrassed him. Fine, Elena said. She untied the black apron, the one that represented all her debt and failure, folded it neatly, and placed it on the service tray. I'll send you a forwarding address for my last paycheck, she said to Peterson. Then she looked directly at Julian Thorne. Have a lovely evening, Mr. Thorne, she said in perfect English. She leaned in just slightly and whispered in Arabic so only he and Cole could hear, and good luck on your deal. You're going to need it. Then she turned and walked out of the room. She didn't slam the door. She closed it gently behind her, leaving Julian Thorne and his associate in the wreckage of the silence she had created. Elena walked out of the Meridian into the cold Chicago night, and the reality of her situation hit her with the force of the wind coming off the lake. She was fired. She was unemployed. Her rent was due in a week, and her student loan payment, a staggering 800 tools, was due in 2. She had 412 of those in her bank account. Her moment of defiance, which had felt so righteous and powerful in the dining room, now just felt stupid, reckless. What had she accomplished? She had talked back to a billionaire, and now she couldn't pay her rent. She had let her pride ruin her. She went home to her tiny garden-level apartment, the kind where you could see people's feet walking by the window, sat on her second-hand sofa, and did what she hadn't done in years. She cried. She cried for the sheer crushing unfairness of it all that work, all that study, all for nothing. The next day was a blur of grey misery. She woke up, her eyes puffy, and immediately logged onto her laptop. She spent 8 straight hours applying for jobs. She applied to be an executive assistant, a receptionist, a barista, a dog walker. She even applied to another high-end restaurant, knowing she'd have to lie about why she left the Meridian. She also sent her resume to 3 translation services, but they all wanted 5-10 years of in-field experience. Her academic qualifications, it seemed, were worthless in the real world. By 3 p.m., she had received 6 automated rejection emails. Her phone, which had been silent all day, suddenly buzzed. It was an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Clear's throat, a voicemail. She listened, pressing the phone to her ear. A message for Miss Elena Sanchez, said a crisp, professional woman's voice. My name is Amanda Bishop, executive assistant to Mr. Julian Thorne. Mr. Thorne requests a meeting with you this afternoon at his offices. A car is being sent to your address and will arrive in 15 minutes to bring you downtown. Please be ready. The message ended. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. A car, a meeting. Was he going to sue her? Blacklist her from every restaurant in the city? She was terrified. But what choice did she have? If she ignored him, he could still do all those things. At least this way she could face him. She splashed cold water on her face, changed out of her sweatpants into her one interview outfit. A simple black blouse and slack sand ran a brush through her hair. She felt like a prisoner being called to her own sentencing. Exactly 15 minutes later, a gleaming black Mercedes S-Class sedan glided to a stop in front of her apartment building. The driver, a man in a black suit, got out and opened the rear door for her without saying a word. Elena slid into the plush leather interior. The car was silent, insulated from the world, and it pulled away from the curb, leaving her old failed life behind. She had no idea she was being driven toward a new one. The drive was short. They pulled into a private garage beneath a towering glass skyscraper, Thorne Global Headquarters. The driver led her to a private elevator, used a keycard, and the elevator shot upwards, not stopping until it chimed softly and the doors opened directly into a penthouse office. The office was vast. 3 of its walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a staggering 180 view of Chicago and Lake Michigan. The furniture was minimal, expensive, and severe, and at a massive black desk, staring out the window at the sweep of the city, stood Julian Thorne. He was in his shirt sleeves, his suit jacket gone, and he looked like he hadn't slept. "Miss Bishop, you can go hold all my calls," he said, not turning. The assistant who had called Elena woman as sharp and severe as the office itself, nodded once and vanished through a side door, and the elevator doors slid shut behind Elena with a soft whisper, leaving her alone with him. The silence was deafening. He finally turned to face her, and his expression was not angry but calculating, intense. He looked at her the way he had in the restaurant, only now the contempt was gone, replaced by a raw, unsettling curiosity. "You have a master's in linguistics," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Elena said, her voice small but steady. "From where?" "Georgetown," he nodded slowly. "My alma M. My father sits on the board." Elena's heart sank. Of course this was the old boy network. He was going to have her degree revoked. He never mentioned a linguistics department, Thorne continued, walking slowly toward her. He considered it a soft science, a waste of tuition. He stopped a few feet from her. "Last night you spoke in a Gulf dialect. Your accent was flawless, better than my own. Clear as throat. I pay my tutors $500 an hour, and they don't sound as good as you." "I spent a year in Riyadh for my thesis," Elena said, finding her footing. "I lived it." You lived in Riyadh and you were serving me scallops," he said, more to himself than to her, genuinely baffled by the disconnect. "Student loans, Mr. Thorne, they don't pay themselves." He stared at her for a long moment. "Last night I was an arrogant fool. What I said was inexcusable. It was the result of a very high-stress negotiation, but that is no excuse. I am sorry." The apology hung in the air, strange and foreign in that room, just as her Arabic had been in the restaurant. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "But I didn't bring you here to apologize," he said, his tone shifting cleanly back to business. "I brought you here because I have a problem." Clear's throat, greater than he, gestured to his desk, where the same documents from the restaurant were spread out. "This is a $2 billion deal," he said. "A green energy infrastructure project. My partners are a consortium based in Riyadh. The same consortium, I'm sure, whose dialect you just perfected." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "The deal is falling apart. We're arguing over contractual nuances. My lead translator, a man I've used for years, quit 2 days ago, poached by a competitor. I've been using a translation service, and it's a disaster. We're talking past each other. Things are getting hostile." He locked his eyes on hers. "My associate, Mr. Cole, was impressed. I was more than impressed. You didn't just understand what I said. You understood the subtext, the insult, the nuance." He walked back to his desk and picked up a single sheet of paper. "I called the Meridian this morning," he said. "I spoke to Mr. Peterson." Elena braced herself. "I informed him that his behavior was appalling, that you were the most professional person in that room, and that if he ever wanted a single member of my board, my company, or anyone I've ever spoken to set foot in his establishment again, he would issue you a formal apology and offer you your job back with a promotion to manager." Elena blinked. He did," he agreed, Thorne said dismissively. "Of course, you can have your old job back, Miss Sanchez. You can go back to pouring water for men like me." He slid the piece of paper across the desk. "It was a check. Or," he said, "you can accept this. It's a signing bonus for $1 million, and you can come and save my $2 billion deal." Elena stared at the check. It was a cashier's check made out to Elena Sanchez. The number was 1 million borak. She had never seen so many zeros in her life. Her mind reeled. It was a joke. It had to be $1 million, she stammered. "That's your signing bonus," Thorne said impatiently, as if this were a normal Tuesday. "Your salary for the project will be triple that. The project is estimated to last 3 months. If we fail, you keep the bonus. If we succeed, you get a significant completion clears throat fee. He mistook her stunned silence for negotiation. Look, Miss Sanchez, I am in a bad position. My competitors know my translator quit. They are actively trying to sabotage this deal. The consortium I'm meeting with, they are very traditional. They value respect. They value nuance. Last night, you proved you are a master of it. I'm not hiring you to translate words. I'm hiring you to translate intent. Elena finally found her voice, and it was shaken. You insulted me. You got me fired. And now you're offering me $1 million. I didn't get you fired, he corrected sharply. Your incompetent manager fired you, and I rectified that. But yes, the irony is not lost on me. I am offering you a fortune to fix a problem I am having with the very language I use to demean you. The universe, it seems, has a twisted sense of humor. Elena looked from the check to his face. He was not joking. He was desperate and he was smart. He knew from her 30-second reply exactly what she was capable of. He wasn't hiring a waitress. He was hiring a weapon. What other terms? She asked, her voice suddenly businesslike, the shock fading and replaced by the same cold clarity she'd felt in the restaurant. Thorne almost smiled. The terms are simple. You are on retainer 24/7. You will be my personal advisor and sole translator for this negotiation. You will fly with me to Riyadh tomorrow. The negotiations are in person. You'll have an office here, an expense account, a new wardrobe. Miss Bishop will handle everything. All you have to do is what you did last night. Listen to what they're really saying. Elena thought of her 103,41508 in debt. This check would erase it. This check would change her family's life. This check was her get-out-of-jail-free card for the life she was trapped in. But it was more than that. It was validation. It was the chance to use her skills, the chance to be in the room where it happens, not serving the water. I have one condition, Elena said. Thorne raised an eyebrow. I am not your assistant. I am not your servant. I am your linguistic and cultural advisor. You will treat me as a professional. When I am in that room, my word on language and culture is final. If I tell you not to say something, you don't say it. If I tell you that you've misunderstood, you listen. I am not an employee. I am a consultant. Is that clear? The shadow of a genuine smile touched Julian Thorne's lips. Miss Sanchez, for $4 million, you can call yourself whatever you want, as long as you save this deal. Is that clear? Crystal, Elena said. Good, welcome to Thorne Global. He pointed to the check. Dep that on your way to see Miss Bishop. She's waiting for you. A car will take you to get a passport expedited, and then to a tailor. We fly at 6 a.m. Clear's throat. The next 24 hours were a surreal blur. Elena was whisked from the bank, where the teller's hands shook as they processed the deposit, to a high-end salon, to a private tailor who measured her for a dozen bespoke suits and business dresses, all in muted, powerful colors. She was given a new laptop, a new phone, and a portfolio of the deal's sticking points. She didn't sleep. She spent the entire night in her new temporary corporate apartment, which was larger than her entire old building, poring over the documents. She read the mistranslated emails, the faulty contracts, and she instantly saw the problem. The translation service Thorne had used was using formal classical Arabic, but the consortium's internal memos, which had been poorly translated, were peppered with a specific regional Nadi dialect. The translators were missing the colloquialisms. They were translating, "We must wait for the wind to settle," as a poetic musing. Elena knew it was a common business idiom, meaning, "We are waiting for the regulatory committee to give the unofficial go-ahead." Thorne's team had been replying to idiomatic expressions with sterile legalistic English. They weren't just talking past each other, they were insulting each other. Thorne's side seemed blunt and untrusting, and the Saudi side seemed flaky and She was walking into a minefield. At 5 a.m. she met Julian Thorne and Mr. Cole at a private airfield. Thorne was back in his suit armor, his face grim. He nodded at her. "Miss Sanchez, you look different." "So do you, Mr. Thorne," she said. She was wearing a dark navy suit, her hair in a sleek professional shiner. The waitress was gone. They boarded the Gulfstream G650. As the jet climbed over the dark Chicago skyline, Elena opened her laptop. "We need to talk," she said. "We are not going to win this by arguing the contract points." Thorne and Cole looked at her. "We are going to win this," she said, "by offering an apology." "An apology?" Thorne balked. "For what?" "Their indecision." "An apology," Elena said, her voice firm. "For our arrogance. We've been translating their courtesy as weakness and our directness as strength. It's the other way around. We've been shouting at them in a language they understand all too well. We are going to start this meeting by me apologizing on your behalf for the cultural ignorance of our previous translators. We are going to show humility and then clear his throat. We are going to fix this. Julian Thorne stared at her, the woman who had served him water 48 hours ago. He was about to argue, but he saw the look in her eyes. It was the same look she'd had in the restaurant, a look of absolute unshakable certainty. He nodded. Do it. The boardroom in Riyadh was an exercise in opulent power, a single polished slab of mahogany stretching 30 feet, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a cityscape of sand and glass. On one side sat Julian Thorne, Mr. Cole, and Elena Sanchez. On the other sat Sheikh Al, the patriarch of the consortium, and his 3 sons, along with their own legal team. And at the end of the table sat a man introduced as Mr. Ibrahim, their lead translator. Elena recognized him, or rather, she recognized his name. She had read a paper he'd published. He was brilliant, but known for being ruthless. The mood was ice cold. The sheikh, a formidable man in immaculate white robes, had not smiled. The meeting began in English. Mr. Thorne, the sheikh said, his voice a deep rumble, we are displeased. Your contracts are aggressive. Your timelines are disrespectful. We feel you do not understand the way we do business. Thorne tensed, already about to retort, but Elena placed a hand gently on the portfolio in front of him, the prearranged stop signal. She leaned forward and addressed the sheikh, beginning in perfect formal Arabic. Your Excellency Sheikh Al-Jamil, may I be permitted to speak? The sheikh and his sons registered a flicker of surprise. Their own translator, Ibrahim, narrowed his eyes. You may, the sheikh said, curiosity breaking through the frost. My name is Elena Sanchez. I am Mr. Thorne's senior cultural and linguistic advisor. I have only just been brought onto this project, and I must begin on behalf of Thorne Global with an apology. The temperature in the room changed. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted. We have been reviewing the correspondence, Elena continued in Arabic, and it is clear to us that our previous representation did not afford you the respect you are due. They mistook your careful, deliberate planning for hesitation. Clear as throat, they failed to understand the nuances of your regional expressions. And in doing so they replied with a bluntness that I am sure was perceived as arrogant. That was our failure, not yours, and we are here to correct it. The sheikh stared at her. He had not expected this. He looked at Thorne. Mr. Thorne, this woman speaks for you. Thorne, following Elena's script, nodded. She does. On all matters of culture and language, Ms. Sanchez's voice is my voice. The sheikh stroked his beard, then nodded at Ella. Continue. For the next 2 hours, Elena was a master. She was a conductor, a diplomat, and a dictionary. When Thorne's lawyers would say, we need a firm deadline on the regulatory approval, Elena would translate it as, Mr. Thorne deeply respects the necessity of the regulatory process and wishes to know how we can best support your timeline to ensure a smooth and swift approval. For our mutual benefit, when the sheikh's son would say in Arabic, this is impossible. My father will not be pushed. Ibrahim, the other translator, would translate it to the room as this is not possible. Elena would politely interject. If I may, Mr. Ibrahim, I believe the sheikh's son's intent was not just that it is impossible, but that the pacing of the request feels pressured, which is a matter of respect, not capability. Is that correct? The son would look at her, shocked, and nod. Yes, exactly. Julian Thorne watched this meme unfold before him. She wasn't just translating. She was diffusing bombs. She was reframing the entire negotiation, not as an argument but as a collaboration. Then came the sticking point, her liability clause. The consortium wanted Thor Global to assume all risk for regulatory delays. Thorne's lawyers refused. The argument grew heated. Finally, the sheikh held up a hand and spoke to his sons and his translator, Mr. Ibrahim, in rapid-fire Arabic. They were having a private, heated debate. Elena and the Thorne team sat in silence, waiting. The sheikh was angry. This is an insult, he said in Arabic. Why should we trust them? And then Mr. Ibrahim, the translator, said something quiet and fast to the sheikh. Your Excellency, perhaps a compromise. We can agree to their clause, but only if they agree to use our preferred local subcontractor for all labor. The sheikh nodded. Fine. Propose it. Mr. Ibrahim turned to the Thorne team, his face a mask of professional calm, and began to speak in English. Gentlemen, Miss Sanchez, the sheikh is willing to make a concession. He will agree to your liability clause. Thorne's lawyers looked visibly relieved. On one small condition, as a show of goodwill, he requests that you prioritize hiring local labor as opportunities allow. A symbolic gesture, Mr. Cole brightened. That's it. A symbolic gesture. Absolutely. We can put that in a memorandum. It's not even a contractual change. Thorne looked at Elena. She was staring, not at Ibrahim but at her notepad, her face pale. Miss Sanchez, Thorne asked carefully, is that acceptable? Elena took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment. Mr. Thorne, she clear's throat said, her voice low and steady. May I have a word with you and Mr. Cole in private for 1 minute? The request was a breach of protocol. The Saudi team looked annoyed. Ibrahim looked nervous. It is urgent, she added. Thorne, honoring his promise, stood. 5 minutes, gentlemen. Please excuse us. They stepped into the private anteroom, and the second the door closed, Thorne grabbed her arm. What is it? That was great news. We won. We're being cheated, Elena said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. That translator, Ibrahim, he's lying. What? Cole said sharply. What do you mean lying? He didn't translate what the sheikh said. He didn't even translate what he said. He's inserting his own agenda. Explain, Thorne said, his eyes turning to dark ice. Ibrahim proposed a compromise to the sheikh. He didn't say local labor. He said their preferred local subcontractor singular, and when he translated it for us, he changed it to local labor as opportunities allow. He softened it. He's playing both sides. Why? Cole asked. I don't know, Elena said. But a preferred subcontractor isn't a symbolic gesture. It's a multi-million-dollar kickback. He's trying to slip it past us and past them. He's likely getting paid by this subcontractor. He's sabotaging the deal for his own profit. Thorne was silent for a beat, the level of deception staggering. He had been about to walk right into it. He's betting, Thorne said slowly, that you're just a standard translator, that you wouldn't catch the difference between local labor and a preferred subcontractor. He's betting that you're just like the last ones. What do we do? Cole asked, panicked. We can't accuse him. We'll insult the sheikh and blow the whole deal. Thorne looked at Elena, the trust in his eyes absolute. What do you do, Miss Sanchez? This is your room. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't accuse Ibrahim. In English it would be her word against his. She couldn't accuse him in front of the sheikh. It would cause a massive loss of face. She had to expose him, but she had to do it to him and let him hang himself. I have an idea, she said, but you have to follow my lead. Do not react. And Mr. Thorne, I need you to look angry, not at him, at me. Thorne frowned. I don't understand. You're not supposed to, she said. They're not supposed to. Just trust me. They re-entered the boardroom, the atmosphere tight and expectant. Mr. Ibrahim, the translator, looked smug. Our apologies, gentlemen, Julian Thorne said, his voice hard as steel as he sat down without looking at the sheikh, glaring as requested at Helena. Mr. Ibrahim, Thorne continued in English. Your translation was a symbolic gesture. My advisor, he said the word with a slight sneer, seems to think this is a more binding request. She is cautious. Elena kept her face down as if being reprimanded. Ibrahim smiled, a thin, oily smile. It is merely a sign of mutual respect, Mr. Thorne, a cultural necessity. Your advisor is perhaps unfamiliar with the scale of such deals. It is nothing for your lawyers to worry about. He was patronizing her. He too saw her as the help who had gotten lucky. I see, Thorne said evenly. So you are confirming it is a non-binding request for local labor? Precisely, Ibrahim said. Good. Thorne leaned back. Then we have a deal. Mr. Cole looked at Elena in panic. What was she doing? She was letting it happen. The sheikh looked pleased. Excellent. We will have the final contracts drawn up. Papers began to shuffle. Chairs scraped softly against the polished floor. The deal was done. Elena waited until the sheikh had stood, until Ibrahim was shaking Mr. Cole's hand with his false smile. Then she spoke. She did not speak in English. She did not speak in the formal Arabic of the meeting. She spoke directly to Mr. Ibrahim in a sharp-cutting Egyptian dialect, the dialect known in the linguistic world as the language of media confrontation and a good intellectual fight. Mr. Ibrahim, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the room. Ibrahim froze, his hand still holding Cole's. You are a very skilled man, Elena continued in Arabic, a polite smile on her face. I was just reading your 2019 paper on contractual false friends in Gulf negotiations. It was brilliant, especially your section on the preferred subcontractor gambit. Ibrahim's face went from smug to ashen in a fraction of a second. He looked as if she had physically struck him. The sheikh and his sons, who had been talking among themselves, stopped and turned. They heard the shift in language. They saw the look on Ibrahim's face. What is this? The sheikh demanded, his voice sharp. What did she say? I.e. Rami, he stammered, pulling his hand back from Cole. I was just telling Mr. to Ibrahim how much I admired his academic work, Elena said, switching back to the formal Gulf dialect, her voice full of false innocence. He wrote a fascinating paper on how dishonest translators can attempt to slip kickback clauses into negotiations, specifically by using the term a preferred subcontractor when their client simply meant local labor. It's a classic deceitful tactic. She held Ibrahim's gaze, her smile unwavering. A lesser translator might have missed it. But you and I, we know the difference, don't we, Mr. Ibrahim? A terrible, profound silence fell over the room. Ibrahim was trapped. He was sweating. The sheikh was not a stupid man. He looked at Ibrahim and understood instantly they had been played. Ibrahim, the sheikh said, his voice terrifyingly quiet, is this true? Did you attempt to deceive me and my guests? Your Excellency, it was a misunderstanding. A linguistic nuance, Ibrahim pleaded, his career evaporating before his eyes. A nuance. The sheikh roared, his voice bouncing off the glass walls. You lied. You used this tactic in my negotiation. He did, Elena said quietly, her voice cutting through the sheikh's rage. He proposed it to you as a compromise, and then he deliberately mistranslated it to us as a symbolic gesture. He was robbing you both. The sheikh's face turned purple with fury. He snapped his fingers sharply, and 2 large security guards who had been standing by the door entered the room. Get this thief out of my sight, the sheikh commanded, his voice echoing with fury. He is finished in this city. He will be finished in this entire hemisphere. Ibrahim, pale and shaking, was physically escorted from the room, his feet stumbling as the guards took him by the arms. And when the door shut behind him, the room was silent again, heavy and stunned. The deal which had been done was now in tatters. The trust was broken. Mr. Nicole looked like he was going to be sick, and Thorne just stared at the door where Ibrahim had vanished as if trying to process how close they had come to disaster, while Elena, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat, turned to the sheikh and bowed her head slightly. Your Excellency, she said carefully, we deeply apologize. This was a violation of your trust, of our trust. The sheikh's anger was still radiating as he looked at her. You knew. You heard it, and you exposed it. It was my job to protect my client. Sir, Elena said steadily, even though her pulse was racing. And it was my duty to protect the honor of this negotiation. The sheikh stared at her for a long, agonizing moment that seemed to stretch forever. Then a slow, deep laugh began in his chest. It was not a happy laugh, but it was not an angry one either. It was a laugh of pure, astonished respect. Mr. Thorne, the sheikh boomed, turning toward Julian, this woman, she has the eyes of a hawk and the courage of a lion. Where did you find her? Thorne, who had been watching Elena with an expression of sheer awe, finally found his voice. She found me, Your Excellency. The sheikh slapped the table, the sharp sound cutting through the tension. I see. Well, the snake is gone from our garden. Now, let us talk. Really talk with no more lies. He looked directly at Elena. And you, Miss Sanchez, you will sit next to me. I am tired of translators. From now on, I will speak to you, and you will speak to him. We will make this deal together. The deal was signed 3 days later, and it was a better deal than Thorne had ever imagined. The sheikh, impressed by Elena's integrity and Thorne's wisdom in trusting her, had conceded on almost every major point, and the $2 billion project was secure. The flight back to Chicago was quiet, almost contemplative. Mr. Cole slept in his seat, exhausted beyond words. Elena stared out the window at the curve of the earth glowing against the dark sky, and Thorne sat across from her with a glass of untouched whiskey resting on the table, saying very little since the meeting, his mind clearly elsewhere. As they began their descent over Lake Michigan, he finally broke the silence. How did you know? He asked softly, meaning the kickback. How did you know to call his bluff with that academic paper? Elena turned from the window and looked at him. I didn't, she admitted. What, I lied? I've never read a paper by him. I don't even know if he's ever written one. I just knew that a man that arrogant who was willing to cheat in a room that big had to have an ego. I gambled that he saw himself as a brilliant strategist. So I quoted his brilliant work back to him. It was the only way to expose him without accusing him. I just needed him to believe that I was on his level and that he'd been caught. Julian Thorne stared at her, greater than clear's throat, greater than not shocked exactly, but something deeper, something like admiration dawning in real time. And then he started to laugh, a low, genuine laugh, the first one she had ever heard from him. Clear's throat, you didn't just translate Elena, he said, using her first name for the first time, his tone warm with respect. You ran a psychological operation. You took down a con man, saved a multi-billion-dollar deal, and negotiated a new one, all in a language you were supposedly too empty-headed to understand. He shook his head slowly, glancing down at his untouched glass. That $1 million bonus. It was the biggest bargain of my life. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, she said automatically. Julian, he corrected gently. I think we're past Mr. Thorne. Julian, she agreed, tasting the name as the plane touched down. A car was waiting for them, and it dropped Elena at her new corporate apartment. As she stepped out, Julian said, I've cleared your schedule for a week. Elena, go buy a house, a car, whatever you want. Then come see me in my office. Elena did just that, but the first thing she did was log into her student loan account. She stared at the payoff amount 103 or 150 estates, her fingers trembling slightly as she hit submit, and when the screen read, Congratulations, your loan is paid in full, she sank down onto the floor of the empty, luxurious apartment and wept. But this time the tears were different, lighter, almost disbelieving. A week later, she walked into Julian Thorne's office wearing one of her new custom suits. No longer a waitress, no longer in debt, a free woman standing on her own terms. Elena, Julian said, rising to greet her, Congratulations. Thank you, Julian, for the opportunity. Don't thank me, he replied. I should be thanking you, which is why I have a new proposal. He gestured for her to sit, his expression serious now. The bonus and the project fee, that's all yours. It's in your account. We're square. It's more than square, she said quietly. You've changed my life. Good, he answered without hesitation. Now I'm going to change it again. That deal in Riyadh, it's just the start. The Sheikh wants us to be his primary partner for all his US and European ventures. He's opening a door, but I don't have anyone who knows how to walk through it. He leaned forward, his eyes steady on hers. I don't need a part-time translator, Elena. I need a new division. I'm opening a new branch of Thorne Global Middle East Operations and Cultural Strategy, and I want you to run it. Elena's breath caught. Run it, as in be an employee. No, Julian said firmly, a faint smile touching his lips. I don't want you as an employee. I saw you in that room. You're not an employee. You're a shark, and I'd rather have you in my tank than in the open ocean. He slid a document across the table, slow and deliberate. It was a partnership agreement. I'm offering you a full partnership in the new division. A stake, a percentage of every deal you broker. You won't be working for me, Elena. You'll be working with me. Elena looked down at the document, at the weight of the words on the page, then back up at his face. Why, you could hire anyone, but I don't want anyone, Julian said, his voice quiet now, stripped of ego and performance. I want you because you're smarter than me. Not in business, not yet, but in people and in language, and you're not afraid of me. You're the only person in this company, aside from maybe Mr. Cole, who has ever told me I was wrong, who has ever called me on my arrogance. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline as if searching for something in the glass and steel. There's another reason, he said, his back still to her. My mother, she was a linguist. She spoke 4 languages. She translated poetry. She was brilliant. And my father, he called it her hobby. He said it was soft. He dismissed her entire life. He treated her brilliance like it was an amusing party trick. He turned to face her, and there was something unguarded in his expression. When I was in that restaurant, when I insulted you, I was being my father. I was being the exact kind of ignorant, arrogant man I swore I would never become. You reminded me of her, and you did something she never got the chance to do. You fought back and you won. He took a deep breath, steady but heavy. This isn't just a job offer, Elena. It's an apology, and it's a chance for me to finally, in some small way, honor the brilliance I saw dismissed my whole life. Don't work for me. Be my partner. Help me build something that lasts. Elena Sanchez, the waitress who was once fired for a single drop of water, stood there looking at the billionaire who had once insulted her, and she understood that he was not just offering her a job or money, he was offering her respect. She rose slowly and extended her hand. On one condition, she said. Julian smiled faintly, as if he had been waiting for that. Name it. We, the new division, will set up a scholarship fund at Georgetown's linguistics department, a full-ride scholarship in your mother's name, so that the next brilliant mind who masters a language doesn't have to choose between their passion and a lifetime of debt, so they never have to pour water for a man like you. Julian Thorne looked at her hand and did not hesitate. He grasped it firmly. Done, he said. Welcome to the company, partner. The story of Elena Sanchez reminds us that our true worth isn't determined by our job title or the uniform we wear. It's determined by our knowledge, our character, and our courage. Elena had a skill that the world had overlooked, but when the moment came, she was ready. She turned an insult into an opportunity and an opportunity into an empire. She didn't just get revenge, she got respect, and she used her new power to lift others up with her. True power isn't about being the loudest person in the room like Julian Thorne was. It's about being the person who understands what's really being said. What do you think about Elena's incredible comeback? Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you? Let us know your story in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story inspired you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of karma and triumph. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next